Hello and welcome everybody. I'm James Leichter from Aptora, and I appreciate you being here at another one of our monthly webinars. I think we have really good material today. It's all about business planning, but it has a little bit to do with using Total Office Manager, the mobile app, but it has a lot to do with just managing your company in an efficient way. And I hope you'll like the material that we're going to cover today. So the first thing that I want you to think about in your company when it comes to organization is that everyone needs to know what they are supposed to do and who they are supposed to answer to and how they're supposed to do it. That's pretty obvious. I think you've probably heard the old saying, if it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job, and I agree with that. But I like to say that if everyone is responsible for it, then nobody's accountable for it. So let's say that we're all supposed to take out the trash. It's just everybody's job. Well, then it really isn't anyone's job. And more importantly, no individual is accountable for that. That's a common problem in all of our companies, including my companies. It's just a common thing. You have tasks or duties that everyone is responsible for, or multiple people are responsible for it, and it doesn't tend to get done. So what I have here is a Word document that I use with my coaching clients, consulting clients to help introduce this concept and get things organized in their business. This document, which I'll make available to all of you, it's written primarily for an HVAC company, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be effective for plumbing or electrical or anything else. And it was primarily written for a company that does residential and light commercial work, 2 to 5 million in sales. But as you'll see, that doesn't really matter. It's all the same, no matter what company you have, what structure it is. The basic process overview is this. You want to organize your company by departments. You want to think about all the different departments that could exist in your business. You want to group them in a logical way, like you might have AP, AR, or maybe just accounting. You might have admin, you might have warehousing, field operations, service, maintenance, etc. We'll get into that more in a minute, but that's number one, is we want to organize our company by function group or department. The next thing we want to do is define the purpose of each department. What is that department for? If we have a field operations department or a service department, what is the purpose of the service department, and how do we know if they are fulfilling their purpose? What are the key performance indicators, the measurables? And that's the next step. Step 3 is we have to create, after we know the purpose, we know the name of the department, we know its purpose. Now we have to create the measurables so we all know if they are getting their job done. So each department needs measurables. The next step number 4, is list all of your employees. That part's easy, right? And most of you have a lot of this done already, I would guess. Once we have a list of employees, then we want to create a list of job titles for those employees. Now, job titles are not that important. The words that you use aren't necessarily that important. The reason why a job title is important is it distinguishes one person from another. And as we'll see in a moment, that's really important when you start organizing people and letting people know what they are supposed to do. After we have that list of titles, now we can assign the job titles to our departments, not to the people, to the departments. So let's say one of the job titles is payroll clerk, payroll specialist. We assign that person to the correct department. We might have a department simply called G&A, General and Administrative, or Administration, or Admin. We want to assign the title to the department. Why have we not dealt with the employees yet? Because employees come and go, they get promoted, we add people, we expand. That's why we deal with titles first. We need to know where the title works and what the title does, regardless of the name within that title. And I hope that makes sense. So we might have office manager. We don't want to say that's Ruby, the office manager. We want to say office manager so we know regardless of who is fulfilling that role. She might be on vacation and I've stepped in to fill that role. That's why we consider the title first. So now that we have all those titles assigned to their departments, it's finally time to assign the titles to the employees. We put the employee with the title. If you duplicate a title for internal purposes, you want to assign a number or some other distinguishment to it. Like, for example, Service Tech 1, 2, 3, 4. You wouldn't call the person, well, you wouldn't put on their business card Service Tech 1, 2, 3, or 4. But internally, we don't want to repeat the title. We want to have Service 1, 2, 3, and you'll see why more in a minute. All right, now that that is done, it's time to assign, or create rather, a list of essential functions. I said assign, that's actually another step, but we want to create a list of essential functions. These are the functions that are absolutely essential to running your company. You could have thousands, of course, so the challenging part is to think about what is the most essential set of functions, tasks, to run our company. Well, I can think of one. How do we get in the front door? Who's in charge of the front door? Who's in charge of billing access? If I'm a new employee, who do I go see for a key to the door? Who do I go see to find out what my code is for the door? What about the alarm system? Who do I go see? Usually it's the owner, by the way. If there's any question, the owner is interrupted with all these questions. But we want to start there, building access. When somebody gets hired or somebody can't get through the door, who do they go talk to? What about the alarm code? Who calls the alarm company? Who resets the alarm codes, etc.? What about the back door? Who controls access to it? Maybe number two is who answers the phone? Who answers the telephone? Do I answer the phone or am I backup? We might have a rule that says I answer the phone primarily and you answer the phone on 4 rings. So when you hear the phone ring 4 times at the end of 4, then you grab that phone call as fast as you can. That may be the rule. Another one might be, again, these are essential functions. Another one could be, how do we answer the phone? How are we supposed to answer it? Do we just make it up? Or is there some official way to answer the phone? Thank you for calling Mr. HVAC. This is James. How may I help you? That's the official way. That's how I want it done, as an example. So after we have a list of essential functions, then we have the basis for creating an accountability chart. We can write really good job descriptions. We can create standard operating procedures. We can then schedule meetings and start training everybody on their essential functions. Imagine if you knew all the essential functions. Let's see if I have all I do. So if you knew all the essential functions in your company, then you would know who is supposed to read what chapter or what section in this 700-page user manual, and that would be helpful. You would know what YouTube videos each person should be watching because you've listed all their essential functions. Now keep in mind, this has nothing to do with software. It especially has nothing to do with our software. You could be using QuickBooks and nothing else. You could be using some competitor software. I'd appreciate you staying with us, but this is software agnostic. You need to know what the essential functions are in your company regardless of what software program you have, but knowing them tells you what software you should buy, number one, because you're going to match the software with what it takes to run your company. Number two, you're going to know who needs to learn what about the software, and then you can have them prove to you their competency in the software. I mean, show me how you do it. Show me how you enter a sales lead. Show me how you assign that sales lead to Will. Let me see you do it. That goes a long way to organizing your company, and if you're an owner, getting people off your back, having less to do. One thing I want to say about job titles is that you have probably more job titles than you think. Just because you're a small company doesn't mean that you have a small number of job titles or even a small number of departments, divisions in your company. You don't. Somebody in your company, for example, is likely the IT manager, right? And you might say, well, no, we don't have an IT manager. We're a small company. Well, you do. You have an IT manager, just maybe not a dedicated one, maybe not full-time, maybe not a very good one, But you have an IT manager, and it's probably you, the owner. The owner's probably the IT manager, or maybe a service tech happens to be good with computers. Maybe we have a few of them. Well, that's a job title that you need to create, and you need to assign that person to that job title. So you'll have many people appearing more than once on your organization chart. I especially would like to see the owner carefully add him or herself in many different places on that organization or accountability chart, as I like to call it, so we can all see how many hats that she's wearing. But just remember, if somebody's doing the work in your company and it represents 3-4 hours a week of work, then it definitely belongs on your accountability or organization chart. They definitely need to be named. They have to have a title and assigned to a department. So that IT person is part of G&A, and it's the owner, and you put them on that chart. And we'll do that in a moment. Let's talk about the basics of your departments. Now, in our industry, when we think of departments, we often think, at least it seems to me, we often think of like service, installation, new construction. We don't really think about the office. But technically, those are profit centers. Service, install, new construction, maintenance, service agreements, those are profit centers. But we typically just call them departments. And for the sake of training and discussion, I'll call all those things a department. So all companies have at least 4 departments in their business. They have marketing. And you might say, well, no, we don't have a marketing department. Well, you do. Somebody's doing marketing. They may not be very good at it. They may not be spending very much money or any money, but somebody is doing marketing, because remember, marketing is the only way you're creating a sales lead. And if you've got a sales lead, then you've got marketing. Well, we're word of mouth. Well, the marketing department creates that word of mouth. So I hope that makes sense. Everyone's got marketing. Everyone has sales. Even if you don't, someone sold something, so you have a sales department. You have marketing, you have sales. And then every company has accounting and finance. That's one thing. Usually we use one word or the other, or put them like that, accounting ampersand finance. But everybody's got accounting and finance because somebody's managing the aspects of money flowing in and out of your company. Somebody made a bank deposit. Somebody received money and put it in the bank, right? And then in our industry, we've got warehousing, and pretty much all companies are going to have warehousing of some kind. It might be called something different, but if you think about Aldi, they have warehousing, don't they? Aldi has marketing, sales. Aldi who? Who's he talking about? Aldi heating and air conditioning? No, I'm using Aldi, the grocery store, as an example, because even though they're a grocery store and have little to do with our company, they actually have the same departments. They have marketing, they have sales, they have accounting, and they have warehousing. They might have more than that, but everyone has at least those 4. In addition to those 4, in our industry, we have field operations. We don't have a manufacturing plant, but that's kind of like our version of a manufacturing plant. So we have warehousing like Aldi does, and we actually have manufacturing like Aldi does, but we call it field operations because it's all out in the field. We're doing our work out in the field. That is really what makes us unique, is we bring the business to everybody else. And that, by the way, is the reason for the high overhead. We bring the business to everybody else, and that requires a highly skilled person operating expensive assets. So that is the starter for your departments in your company: marketing, sales, accounting, admin, warehousing, field operations. Where do you put that in Total Office Manager? You click Companies, List, Departments, and you add those to the department list. But if you've ever worked with me, you've heard me say you don't need a marketing department. You don't need a sales department. Well, you don't. In the department list in Total Office Manager, it really could be called Profit Center List. But we just don't talk like that typically in the industry. So all those years ago, we made the decision just to call them departments, but you can think of them as profit centers. It's okay to have an admin in there within reason, but the purpose of it was to have a list of all the ways money flows into your company. So at a bare minimum, you all want, in field operations, you want to divide it out by service, replacement and add-on, and service agreements. If you do new construction, then you want new construction. Service agreements, by the way, would be scheduled maintenance and service agreement sales, not tune-ups. So if you put a tune-up out for sale, we're running a special, we'll do this $100 tune-up, that would go to service. But when you are, arguably, it could go to your service agreement department, but service agreement department is where all the revenue goes when you sell a service agreement, when you're doing planned maintenance. Even if they don't have an agreement, it's just a handshake, but they don't have a piece of paper, that's what that's for. Anyway, didn't want to beat that to death, but you at least have service, installation, and you have service agreements or maintenance, and then some of you might have new construction, and it goes on. Some of you do plumbing, you do electrical. One decision you want to make early on is, do you need to divide your company out by residential and commercial? We would call those divisions, and within those we have departments. The only reason why you would ever do that is when you need to distinguish commercial work from residential work. Like you have dedicated people, dedicated funds, budgets, dedicated managers. Your company has different pricing structures for residential versus commercial, then I would encourage you to have a residential division, and within it, service, replacement, add-on, maintenance, and then under commercial, you could have design, build, service, etc. Whether you do plumbing, electrical, HVAC, that's a decision you want to make early on. Commercial, residential divisions, is it needed? For most of us, at least when I was a contractor, there was no reason to distinguish the two because the pricing was largely the same. And we called ourselves a residential light commercial company. We didn't distinguish the two, but you might want to. Now that you have that established and it's added to your software, then you have the ability to create reports for each of those divisions and each of those departments. If you can create reports for them, now you can think about, well, what are the measurables that are important? And let's start finding them in the software. So let's get into that. Let's look at each one of these departments and the roles within each. The first thing we want to do, the whole purpose behind this, is to establish clear expectations by department, by role. Notice I'm not saying by person, because the person can change. We always want to think about their role, their title. First up, the executive or G&A, General Administration. Purpose, provide leadership, direction, and alignment across all departments. The definition, I won't read it to you, but it's clear. We have a clear definition. So we have a clear department name, clear purpose, clear definition. Right there, we're money ahead. Right there, we have more than most companies have. Next thing, what are the measurables? So how do we measure the effectiveness of the executive side of our company? The CEO, the president, the owner? Well, I used what I call top performance indicators. These are the absolute top, most important indicators, and they could be different with you, but here are mine. Number one, annual revenue growth. That's number one. If you're not growing, you're dying. You at least have to keep up with inflation. Arguably, that's 4%, 5%, whatever. In our industry, it's like 25%, but you at least have to grow at the rate of inflation to not grow. I'll repeat that. If inflation's 5% and you grow at 5%, you did not grow at all. If you grew at 4%, you shrank by 1%. So you have to at least keep up with inflation, right? You might want to grow at, say, 19%. That would double your size in revenue in 4 years. So if you're doing $1 million today, in 4 years, you would be doing $4 million if you grew at 19% a year. That's not my recommendation for you, by the way. That's just a number so you can see something. Net profit before taxes, 15% or greater. That's only 15 cents on the dollar before I pay taxes. That's a top performance indicator, number two. Number three, positive operating cash flow. Operating meaning I didn't borrow a bunch of money. If I can have $1 today and $1 in a year, then I've got positive cash flow, at least not negative cash flow. I've got break-even cash flow, but you get the idea. We want our third most important thing to be to not run out of money. So we need to have neutral, at least neutral or positive cash flow. We need to have the same amount of money or more in the bank in a year than we do right now without leveraging ourselves. That's how I came up with operating cash flow, or sometimes they'll say organic cash flow. Number 4, this is kind of a surprise. For the owner president only, another top performance indicator is how many job titles do they hold. You might have 7 today and you want to get yourself to 2. And I would doubt that many owners out there don't have multiple job titles. When they really think about it, who's the janitor of the building? I am. My wife and I own the building that we're in right now. And to be honest, we're the maintenance team, we're the janitor. Actually, we have janitorial help now. But we're the maintenance team. She's my boss. I'm the maintenance helper. So in our building, my boss is my wife, and we assume that role. And do you think we like it? No, we don't. But there's not enough people that work in this building that can fix things. It's not the money. It's just the fact that we don't have anyone else to do it. You get the idea. Don't forget to assign yourself properly to multiple roles. All right, so we have a purpose, we have a definition, we have measurables. Now, we just need reports. We got to go shopping for software. Can we get software that'll give us that? Well, you have it now. What are the job titles? Owner, president, general manager. What are their essential functions? This is what I talked about earlier. You have to identify not 100 things, but just maybe a half a dozen absolutely essential functions for these roles. So what are we expecting from them? Well, they set company goals. They set financial targets. They set department priorities. They allocate resources and manage overall business performance, etc. So once we have the essential functions, then pretty much everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing at this point. They know what department they work for. They know the purpose of the department. The department's defined in case they don't know what the department's all about. They know what their measurables are. You know, these are like touchdowns, field goals, extra points, first downs, etc. They know what those are. We now have titles for reference, so we can go look at an accountability or organization chart and find out who the president is, and we know who we can talk to about what, and we know their essential functions. We have something called growth job titles, and that would be as your company grows, these are titles that people would start assuming. You might need, for example, an operations manager who the general manager answers to. You might need a chief financial officer. You already have one, by the way. It may not be a very good one. It might be you. You might be awesome. I don't know. But a lot of owners are the chief financial officer. They have to be. Somebody is. And they're not really interested in the job, and they don't really want it, and they don't attempt to learn anything about it. So the company has a really bad CFO. But the company has a CFO, right? Nobody can tell me, well, we're a small company, we don't have a CFO. Sure you do, just don't have one that knows they're the CFO, right? You might have a human resource director. You might have an executive assistant. The next department, service. And I won't read them all to you. We're going to do this department, and then I'll scan through the rest of them to show you how I constructed this. The service department, what's the purpose? Deliver high-quality HVAC service, repair, and maintenance to residential and light commercial customers. All right. Well, that's enough to know how to construct your department list in Total Office Manager, right? The definition, blah, blah, blah. Define it. What is it? What's high quality mean, etc. Now for the measurables. Now, these are my general recommendations, by the way, but to not know anything about you, you can't consider this like my prescription for your company, but this will give you something to think about. Measurables. Number 1 for me is gross profit dollars per person day. I need 625. So I need to figure out how many person days I can sell in a year. It's usually about 240 per full-time employee. And I need 625 gross profit dollars from each. Notice I didn't say average ticket price. I didn't say anything about gross profit margin as a percent. I didn't say anything about annual revenue, because none of that really matters. What really matters is the gross profit dollars. and how many per day. Customer satisfaction, that's important. Service agreement sales, how many, you could quantify this any way you want, but I think about how many service agreements did we sell per demand service call. Obviously, they don't already own one, right? So it's a demand service call, not a callback, not warranty, not planned maintenance, demand service. 35% of the time, we need to sell a service agreement. And if we can achieve that, then we can do a lot with that information to plan our company's growth, sales, cash flow, etc. Number 4, equipment sales opportunities generated per demand service call. So you run 4 demand service calls. I want to see 1 sales opportunity. It doesn't have to be an awesome opportunity. It just has to be a legit opportunity. I want 1 out of 4. Whatever you want is fine, but this is a measurable, and if it's important to us, then it needs to go on this list. Callbacks are important. We don't want profit-eating callbacks to kill us. Let's keep those under 2%. You run 100 service calls, only 2 is acceptable. 1 trip demand service call. How many times can you run a service call and finish it in 1 shot? Like you don't have to go get parts, things like that. The only exception to that is if you get fully paid to go get parts. If your company does like commercial kitchen work and you charge full price to go get parts and come back, I don't count that because you're getting fully paid for that. If you're getting partially compensated for that, that's not good enough. That's not good enough, so we count that. We want to make sure that we are running 85 out of 100 calls without going and looking for parts. The minute you go look for parts, you're losing money. You're losing money. Remember, you might be a 15% net profit service department. You've got 15 cents on the dollar to play with. If you go looking for parts and aren't getting paid full price for that, all your labor, then you're losing money. Finally, net profit. Net profit, 20% or better. 20%, that's the highest net profit we want. The service department has the highest net profit requirements of any department because it's the most difficult to run. It's the most stressful, most time-consuming, rough in every way. I started with gross profit dollars, and here's why. If I'm bringing in $625, I didn't just pull that number out of my hat. There's no way to do that and have callback problems. There's no way to do that and be chasing parts all day. There's no way to do that and not meet your goal of 20% net profit. So if we can just do $625 a day, and there's no reason why a tech can't see that, on their app or something. If we can do $625 a day, everything else should take care of itself. That's really clear. If we go back and look at the service department, it's really clear what the department's purpose is, how it's defined, what the measurables are, the job titles. And now the essential functions. Diagnose and repair heating, cooling, ventilation systems. Duh, yeah. Perform routine maintenance and seasonal tune-up, sure. So we list those essential functions, and I could have put in a few more here, but usually this is a worksheet and we work on it together. I sit down with a client and say, well, what can you add to that? And they might say, well, generate leads, right? We got to generate leads. We got to do this, that, and the other thing. But you don't want it too long. The growth job titles, remember from earlier, we don't need those titles necessarily today, but we're listing those so people know what we're going to be looking for in the future. So we have those titles set aside. As we grow, we're going to need a field service supervisor. We're going to need a dedicated service dispatcher. A small company might not have a dedicated dispatcher, but you're thinking, we grow at 19%, we're going to need one in a year. And so we want to make sure we get that listed. You could even put it on your org chart. Then finally, we move on to the install department and we repeat the process. And then we move on to the sales and estimating department and we repeat the process. What are the measurables? Sales lead closure rate, 45% or better. Job costing report. Which one? The estimated versus actual. You need to be within 2.75% of that. Say, what? What are you talking about? That might be what you're thinking. Let me bring over Total Office Manager, and we click Reports, and we go to Jobs, right here, job costing stuff. Go down to job estimate versus actual, right there, detailed. And what that'll show you is everything that was estimated for the job versus the actual reality of the job. And I need for you to be within 2.75% of that. And I need the net profit for the job to be 10% or whatever you decide. But there you go. It's clear what the measurables are, and the software has the ability to give you those reports. What if it didn't? What if you've discovered a measurable that's really important and the software can't do it? Well, you can probably get it out of the software because you're using it for bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, and everything else. You're buying stuff, paying for stuff. It's probably in there. You need to create a custom report, or maybe you can talk to us, talk to me about getting it. If there's a business case for it, I want to see it happen. Those are the job titles and the growth titles, the essential functions. Now we come down to marketing. What are the measurables? Marketing needs to create qualified sales opportunities. Well, how many? To the stated goal. So that changes from time to time. Who decides on that? General manager, the owner, the president. We saw that earlier. We know who's in charge of that. When it says stated goal for marketing leads, we already know who owns that. And now we know who's responsible for it and who's accountable for it. So bring in qualified leads. Keep the cost per sales opportunity to the stated goal. Create organic website traffic. Well, how much? Well, you decide. You plug in that number. If it's 100,000 of whatever today, make it 125,000 as your goal. Social media engagement. That might be YouTube views. That might be YouTube thumbs up. That might be subscribers on YouTube. That might be all three. That might be Facebook engagement. What are their titles? Marketing manager, marketing assistant. When you're small, that's fine. As you grow, you have other titles, like you might have an SEO specialist. That's all they do. They just work on SEO, search engine optimization. Essential functions, manage the website content, SEO, digital advertising, etc. It's clear what they do. It's clear. And we just keep going. Customer service and dispatch, phone calls answered, call conversion rate, appointment on time rate, number of online reviews, booking accuracy rate. It's all really clear. Again, essential functions and so forth. Accounting and admin. What are their measurables? Accounts receivable days, accounts payable days, bank reconciliation completed on time rate, payroll accuracy, monthly financial reports delivered on time. These are the titles, functions, growth titles. And then again, as you grow, you'll need to add to this. Like you might need a human resource manager. Somebody's your HR manager right now, right? Somebody is, but you may need a dedicated HR manager. So, speaking of dedicated HR managers, let's look at their job description because we have everything we need to build a job description. Here is my job description for the human resource director. And by the way, you can use these notes like you see right there. Like if you think you need to explain internally what exempt means, then you can also just hover over it and you'll get that little note. But in my case, I don't really want to see those. So I'm going to turn off show comments. And there we go. All right, so here's the job description for the human resource director. I have everything I need on that other document to write this. Essential functions, just copy paste. If you wrote this first, copy paste from this into that other thing. But the essential functions, we already talked about that. If we know what the essential functions are, then we know what the competencies are. So it's easy for us to start with essential functions. Well, I need them to do the interviews. I need them to write ads. I need them to assist the owner with compensation. And need them to negotiate compensation, need them to look into health insurance, etc. Once you write all that down, you now know what their competencies have to be in order for them to do the essential functions. And you know the performance measurables. So whether you start with a job description or you start with the other document, the two complement each other and you're doing some copying and pasting. One thing I definitely recommend is you put in the physical requirements for the job. You might say that that's not needed unless you're a tech. I don't need to worry about that unless it's an installer. office people, we don't need that. Trust me, make a long story short, my wife is an HR person. She has a master's degree in HR. You want physical requirements. You don't want people to tell you that they need time off for things, that they need accommodations later, and you didn't make the physical requirements obvious. So, I can read a few of them to give you an example. Must be able to sit and work at a desk for extended periods of time. Well, you might say, well, that's obvious, but it's not. It's not obvious. Must be able to operate a computer, keyboard, mouse, telephone, standard office equipment. I didn't say you have the know-how. I said you must have the physical ability to do that. You must be able to lift, carry, move office materials and supplies weighing up to approximately 25 pounds. So you want to establish that in the beginning. Then we have a position type, expected work hours. These are your work hours. Your work schedule and attendance requirements. So you're expected to be able to work those hours, and you are expected to attend those days and put in that effort. And it might be, you might put in there 240 billable days in a year. There's an Americans with Disabilities Act statement, standard stuff, a statement about travel, required education, etc. The rest of this is boilerplate. And then finally, there's a place for the department manager to sign it. Like, for example, office manager. But then the HR manager signs it. And by signing it, they say this job description has been read and approved by all levels of management. And then your employee would sign it, and signing it is a condition of employment. That's a condition of employment. When you're being interviewed, I would hand you this job description and have you read it, especially if I thought that you were going to be considered. Okay. I'd hand you the job description. I would tell you to read it, and I would ask you, can you do that? Can you meet the requirements of the job description? Well, yes, I can. Now, it's possible someone might say, or you might believe, that maybe they need some accommodations. I don't want to get too much into HR here, but you might need some accommodations. Like, I can do the job, but I may need wheelchair access or something like that. And I couldn't tell if your building was ADA compliant. It's an old building. I wasn't sure. Well, then you would want something like this, a disability accommodation disclosure statement. And there's two versions. There's one when the job offer has been submitted to the candidate in writing, and then you basically have the same one for candidate accepted the job offer in writing. The reason why we have two is you can ask more once they accept the job. Once they accept the job, they have more protections, and you can also ask more. So that's why we have two. But this is their opportunity to state what accommodations they need, and if they don't take advantage of it, then you don't necessarily have to make those accommodations if you don't want to. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want to advise you on this kind of stuff. I'm just telling you that once you've gone through this exercise, you have the ability to create a very good job description, and now you have a much better idea of who you're looking for and what they need to be able to do. All right, so like always, if you have any questions about any of this, you can hit me up in the chat. Will, who's sitting behind the camera with Alicia, he'll just let me know. And you know what? Side note here, just for fun. Look who visited us today at Aptora. So I get out of my truck today, this morning, and there he is, right there in front of me, that big hawk, sitting, looking at our sign. I guess he likes the sign. But actually, there was a critter down here he wanted to eat. And I just talked to him and took his picture a bunch of times. And that has nothing to do with today, but I just wanted to show you that because I thought it was really cool. All right, so actually, I wanted something fun before we get into something really nerdy here. You remember the document and the exercise we went through with identifying titles, departments, and all of that. Here's a practical way to use that information in your company. Let me open up Microsoft Excel. Like I said, I'll share that document with you. We'll email it to all the attendees. This spreadsheet is a tool I use with coaching clients, and I don't share it outside of my coaching client realm, but it's a good teaching tool. It beats looking at this stuff in Microsoft Excel. Or pardon me, it beats looking at it, say, in PowerPoint. All right. This is my workbook on creating everything we talked about, a way to get organized. The instructions, I just talk about all the things we talked about. The lists are what's important. So let's turn our attention to the left. This is where we establish a list of divisions, if the divisions are needed. Remember, commercial, residential. And then we establish a list of departments to organize the company. So we have the executive leadership. If you're a big company, that might be many different people. A small company, that might just be the owner. That's all. But the executive leadership is the so-called C-suite, the CEO, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, etc. Then you typically have a president. Many times, again, that's one person, one or two. Maybe you are a co-owner of the company, then both of you are the executive suite. We have an accounting finance department. We typically combine those or consider those to be one thing, accounting and finance. That is good enough for many of you, but you might want to divide that out into accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll. Typically, payroll is the first thing you divide out because most companies, as they grow, they end up with a full-time payroll person. That's not the same thing as HR, by the way. If you have the title of HR and you spend your whole week doing payroll, then you're really not an HR person. You're just a payroll person. And the company has a part-time HR person and a full-time payroll person. And that's pretty typical in a big company that pays weekly. Financial planning. So the accounting and finance department has a division for finance and planning. And you might say, oh, no, we don't. No, we don't have one. Yeah, you do. You were at the grocery store the other day thinking about your business, thinking about sales next year. Guess what? You're in charge of the finance planning division, department. That's you, all right? So that's an example of how many hats that an owner might wear. Then we have the G&A, or the administration. Within that is human resources, IT and technology. Like, I can't get into my computer. I forgot my password. I tried to reset it and it doesn't work. Who do I talk to? The owner. Usually it's the owner, right? We would go to the IT and technology department and talk to the person in there. And again, that's going to be, in many companies, not a thing. But somebody's doing it, right? Somebody's doing it. You get a virus, somebody's dealing with it. A lot of times it's an outsider, and I recommend outsiders also go into this list as if they were an employee, because we have that covered. We have an outsider doing it. Office management, building maintenance. You have a sales and marketing department. A lot of times that's combined because the two are handled by the same people, maybe not. Maybe you can divide that out. You'll have sales and you'll have marketing. But a lot of times we combine the two, especially when you're small, but look to break that out into marketing and sales. So let's say your company has pop quiz. Your company has a rehash department. Somebody in your company is responsible for rehashing leads that didn't get closed. Well, what department do they belong in? Well, we already know it's rehash. That sounds good. That's part of sales. So we put that into sales. Sales has a rehash department. You might say, well, that's just one person. We need a whole department for that? Yes, because someday it might be two. Now we have field operations. And we talked about that quite a bit. So we get our field operations list written out: service, planned maintenance, design build, new construction. But also in here, you'll notice dispatching and scheduling. I'll have people sometimes say, well, isn't that the office girls that do that? The office girls? I said that on purpose. I wasn't being sexist. I just said it on purpose because that's all I ever hear. Doesn't the office girls handle that? Aren't they part of the office, under the office manager? No, really, they shouldn't be. They may be, but in the future, they shouldn't be. Dispatching and scheduling is a field operation, and the field operations manager is who they answer to. Project management, estimators, dispatching. So you might have dispatching and scheduling combined, or you might just say dispatching, because you have a dispatcher and you have a scheduler. So in some companies, you have a scheduler that schedules projects, and we'll call them a scheduler. And then you might have a dispatcher who dispatches, schedules, demand service, planned maintenance, etc. As you get bigger, you'll want to maybe divide those two out. You might have other specialty, a catch-all, and remember we talked about the commercial residential. Once we have that established, now we create that list I talked about of titles. So here's all the titles. And you'll think, wow, we don't have a lot of those people. Well, if you do HVAC, you might not have an electrician or an electrical engineer, but you have an HR assistant, you have a general manager, you have a fleet manager. Oh no, I can tell you for sure we don't have a fleet manager. Well, if a truck needs to get the oil changed, what do? Oh, you go talk to the owner. All right, the owner's the fleet manager, right? It's really interesting how, when you list all these things, how many things people do, especially owners. They have so many hats to wear. That's why a top performance indicator was only wear 2 hats, only have 2 titles someday. Inside sales rep, what is that? Well, you might have an inside salesperson like the rehasher. So this isn't the perfect list. It's not the correct list. You create any list you want. You just have to have a list. And if you have 2 fleet managers or 2 field supervisors or 2 service techs, then we're going to reuse that title and we need to add a 1 to it or a 2 or whatever. So using a spreadsheet, now that I have a list of titles, I can assign those to my departments. So you have your departments over here, and we can make a drop down that feeds itself, populates itself with the division or department list we just saw. So this list right here is coming from over here. I create the title, or I use a title. I delete the ones I never will need, never ever. Otherwise, just leave it there. And then you associate that division or department with the title. And if it belongs in 2 different departments, and it shouldn't very often, it should not very often. If it does, though, then you'll repeat the title. So you'll have Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3. It's really important that if you have a technician who's also an installer, that they appear twice. So they're a service tech, but they're also an installer. They need to be in here 2 times, twice. All right, so now that you have that done, and this is just covering the same thing that was covered on that piece of paper, now you're ready, not to get too carried away, but now you're ready to start listing all the essential tasks that have to be accomplished, reoccurring tasks that are essential in your company. Like, for example, make decisions to take legal action to collect on accounts receivable. Who's allowed to do that? Remember, I said legal action. Who's allowed to offer a big discount? If you're trying to collect and I say, Alicia, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry that you weren't happy and you don't want to pay your bills and you lost your job and all that, but I'll take half if you'll pay me right now. Who's authorized to do that? You want to list those things. Now, remember, the goal here is to not think of like every possible scenario just in case we have to take legal action. If you haven't taken legal action in years, then you wouldn't list it. You're listing the things that happen on a regular, ongoing basis because we need to make that clear as to who does that. So some examples: pay vendor bills. Well, that's a no-brainer. We ought to have that. Is that the same thing as enter and verify bills? Well, if it is, then you would combine it. You would say enter, verify, and pay bills. Is that the same person that reconciles the bank and credit card account? Don't combine that because they're separate functions. If that's the same person, fine. I don't recommend that, by the way. Whoever's reconciling your bank account should be somebody completely different than who spends money and deposits money. A few other examples. Who processes payroll? Okay, we know who processes payroll. Then the next question is, who approves payroll? Like if there's any dispute about payroll, who can settle that dispute? Like, I should get the sales commission. Why didn't you give it to me? If you forgot it, that's one thing. If you were told they don't deserve it, that's another. Who settles that dispute? That needs to go in here. Who settles compensation disputes? That's in my list, by the way. Who settles disputed bills? AR, all of that goes in there. Anything really important that happens on a regular basis. Here's one. Who creates a policy for dress and appearance in the office? Who's responsible for that? Who decides the uniform? Who says this is an official shirt? Why can't I just take a magic marker and write your company name on a t-shirt and call that a uniform shirt? Who establishes those rules? Who enforces them, etc.? Those are important. How you answer the phone, who decides that? Who ensures compliance with the Family Medical Leave Act or the Fair Labor Standard Act or OSHA? Who's in charge of safety in your company? Who does safety? Who, here's my first aid kit. Who made the decision that all techs have to have this kit? And who decided what would be in it? And who decides when we check it to make sure that everything is in it like it's supposed to be? When does all that happen? Who's in charge of all that? You may not need to care about a first aid kit, but your company might be big enough that you have to identify whose job is it to make sure that we all have this first aid kit. And by the way, is it okay to just put everything in a paper bag? Or is this the official case for our company? Well, this is mine. This is the official first aid kit for a service tech, and that's that. It's nothing else is allowed. You know, imagine if the military said, just bring your own gun. Well, we'll give you a gun. If you don't like it, you can just bring your own and bring your own boots. You know, they're not gonna allow that, right? So you get the idea. Essential recurring tasks. You probably aren't going to need hundreds. You're probably going to be fine with 50 or 60 or 70. In here, I think that I've got 175 roughly. Who prepares sales lead generation performance reports for management? Well, let's just take a look. That's the sales manager. Well, wouldn't that be the marketing person? It could be, but I say it's the sales manager. You can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter as long as we know who it is. So once you have those reoccurring tasks, then you assign the job title, not the person, the title. If it's the install helper, well, we know who that is. And this is why we have install helper 1, 2, 3, 4 if needed. So we assign the essential task to the job title. I keep repeating that because that's really important. The mistake that companies make is they assign it to the person, but people change, they go on vacation, they get promoted, they leave the company, etc. Assign it to the title. You'll always have the title, and you can always add a title, but the people might change. And then finally, you should know the division or department already, but I like to have it in here in case they belong to different departments, multiple departments. So who produces financial reports and key performance indicator reports? The controller does. All right, and who do they work for? They work for the accounting and finance department. Simple as that. Now, the way you maintain this is if you see something on the list that you haven't done in a long time, you might consider removing it. Might not hurt anything to leave it there, but why have it on there if it's not happening? Most importantly, though, when you hear something happen today, like we make a decision to discount an invoice to collect, or we make a decision to take someone to small claims court, or we get a letter in the mail saying somebody slipped and fell in the parking lot and they're going to sue us, who is supposed to handle that? When someone walked through the office with an envelope from a law firm going, who do I give this to? Who do I give this to? Well, once you answer that question, you want to put it in here. So that way we all know the answer from this day forward. I have a column in here that I recently added, so I haven't populated it, for labor hours, because I thought it might be a good idea to think about, well, how many labor hours are we putting in to each of these things? Because it may be fairly insignificant. That would help me decide how many hats a person could actually wear. 5 hours for this, 2 hours for that. You add up all these different essential tasks, it gives you an idea, regardless of their title, because they may have multiple titles, it gives you an idea. Is it a 40-hour-a-week job, or is it 60, or whatever?
James, we have a quick question.
A question. Questions coming in. All right.
There's 2 viewers are wondering if they can possibly get the Excel file.
If they are a coaching client, I was asked if they can get the Excel file, and I don't share it with anyone that I don't consult with, only because why consult with me if I just give everything away to everybody else? So I don't give it out. I'll share the Word document, which I use with clients, but the Excel spreadsheet, I just keep it in the family. All right, so once you fill out this, you've done a lot. You've done a lot to organizing your company. But at this point, it's really just a secret. All this stuff is a secret. The next step is to start scheduling appointments with your various departments and conduct meetings and let everybody know what the essential tasks are in your company so that they know who they report to, who they answer to, what they're supposed to be doing, etc. Now, earlier I mentioned the standard operating procedures, your SOPs. Let me dig mine up here real quick. Well, first of all, let me just show you, because I had to review something last night. These are my HVAC standard operating procedures. So you're a service tech and you want to know what you're supposed to do with a work order, go here. If you want to know how we answer the phone, the official way of answering the telephone, go here. You want to know who makes coffee, and I mean that literally, go here. Everything is in here that's important. Some things aren't covered, but if you need to know how to do progress billing, go here. You could go to the user manual for progress billing, but let me tell you a secret about SOPs. Standard operating procedures assume that you are technically competent to do whatever the SOP is covering. So if we wrote an SOP on how to operate a forklift, it's not how to operate the forklift like I've never seen a forklift. Where do I start it? It's more like, here's the rules around here for operating a forklift. Here's the rules on safety, maintenance, seatbelt, etc. That's the SOP. So the SOP assumes you're a technically competent forklift operator, but you just have no idea what you're supposed to do with it in this company. So the user manual is to make you technically competent on progress billing, or at least just billing in general, invoices, accounts receivable. Now that you're technically competent, you would go to the company's SOP to find out how the company does performance-based compensation or percentage of completion billing or AIA or whatever. So let me show you an example of this piece of paper. I'll just bring up the Word document. All right. SOPs, HVAC. All right, there it is. Okay, let's open that document. All right, so here is the document for SOPs. It is about 140 pages or something like that. Like chapter 2 is an example of how to create them. Chapter 4, payroll setup and processing. Now remember, no one's the same, so this you may read it and go, that's the stupidest SOP I've ever seen. Who does that? You may say, that's great, that's a lot like the way we do it, but everybody's different. That's why you can't go to the store and buy your SOP. Everyone's different. Your SOP is, so unique to your company. For example, how many companies have the same invoice, have the same chart of accounts? It's really rare, but those things are in your SOP or should be. So let's say that you're a service tech and you want to know what you're supposed to do with the app. Or let's say you're an HVAC company who calls me and says, James, this app is the worst app I've ever seen. What app? The Field app. Worst thing I've ever seen. What's so bad about it? All the permissions and settings. Don't you just have a button I can click to set that up? Does that sound familiar? I bet you've said it. I hear it all the time. And I say, no, not really. There's no easy button. There is a way to copy people over. Like you can copy Fred to John, John to Bill. We could use the ability to copy 1 to 40. That would be a nice feature, but we don't really have an easy button that you can click because everybody's so different. That's what they want to know. Why? Why don't you? Because everybody's so different. How are they different? You can't tell me that we're not like most every company. Yes, I can. You're unlike most every company. Everyone is so unique. It's a real surprise to me too. But let's say that you are a tech and you want to know how to manage the work orders. Let's go to scheduling and, you know what? Let's start with scheduling and dispatching, even though that's not for the tech, but let's go there first. I clicked the wrong thing. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open up my navigation pane, and that'll make it easier on me. Go to scheduling. Where are you, scheduling? Oh, you know what? I'm going to take a detour. We talked about the uniforms. Like, who's in charge of uniforms? Well, there's the uniform program. This is how much we charge, how much comes out of your check. Since it's SOP, it tells you exactly how to set up the uniform program, step by step. Remember, it assumes that you are basically competent, like you're not going, well, where do I find the employees? It assumes you have the basic training, but it just shows you exactly how to set up the uniform program, the workflow, etc. So that's how SOPs work. Again, they assume you pretty much know what you're doing, but then they lay out the law. Like, how do we do our direct deposit? What are the steps? So that's the uniform program. And let's find scheduling. There we go. All right. Here's the scheduling for demand service. First of all, 2 monitors. You have to have 2 monitors. You have to have the schedule board open, and you have to have the customer list open. I point that out. You don't have to, right? This is just an example. You do it any way you want. You have the customer list open. How do you search? Well, we search using the phone all. And when do we open up the customer? Because you don't have to open the customer to create a work order. So the SOP says when. When do you open up the customer? First and create the work order? Or is it okay to just create the work order from the schedule board or the work order list or whatever? You lay all that out. You lay out the rule. How do you answer the phone? Thank you for calling your company name. Mr. HVAC, this is James. How may I help you? It's not good morning, not good afternoon. It's this way, and it's only that way. That's what the SOP is for. So there's the SOP for scheduling, dispatching. Again, you could get carried away and have a lot more pages. You want to add to it as needed. You don't want to do too good a job in the beginning because it's time consuming. Here's really what I wanted to show you. This is the field service management section, chapter, managing a work order, creating an invoice. And you tell them how to log in. It assumes they're already in there and set up, and it says that at the top. You tell them how to log in, when to clock in, when to clock out. We track travel time. Here's what to click. Again, it's not a user manual, so you're not seeing step by step. You're just telling people this is the rule and they know where the button is. Arrival and diagnostic. Remember, this is not software specific, or pardon me, this is not, let me correct myself. This is not only about software, and it's not only about the business. It's kind of a combination of two. So in your SOP, you're mainly talking about business rules and procedures, but you're also mentioning the tools, software, coffee makers, microwave ovens, whatever. You're mentioning the tools used as well. So arrival and diagnostic. Build the work order for pricing. Present the work order. Present the absolutely required repairs. The repairs that are absolutely required to take care of the problem you came out there for. After that's over, after that repair is made, then do the highly recommended repair presentation, etc. Again, it doesn't matter how you do it, just get it in writing. And here's the real point I wanted to make. If you lay out exactly how to use the mobile app, I kind of have an easy button now. Let me show you. If you scroll down, keep going, common settings and permissions. It tells you exactly where to go and what to check. So here you're going permissions and they're checked options. Load calculator, check list and edit. Mobile invoices, check the list, edit, add, view. My timesheets, check the list. Purchase orders, check this, check that, check the other thing. Now go to the flip switches. Under customer, these should be yes. Yes, 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 document, estimate, invoice, timesheet, blah, blah, blah. Yes, yes, yes. All the rest are no's. There's no reason to put in the no's. Just put in the yeses. User settings. Go here. Do this. 50. No, no, no. Yes to this. No to that. Click save. Go over here. Yeah, it's not quite an easy button, but what I'm showing you is exactly what permissions the person needs, what settings have to be established for them to follow the SOP. So that's really the lesson here is, where's the easy button, James? I can't believe the software is so hard to set up. Don't you just have ABC that we can use? Well, in most cases, yes, but you'll still have to customize it. If you could tell me exactly how to do something in your company, it's then easy to set up the software to do it. Not that it can do everything, but at least you can identify what the obstacles are and overcome them. But that's really the key. Again, the key to making any software program, it doesn't mean just ours, anything. You bought Oracle software. The key to making it a lot easier to use is just knowing what everybody's supposed to do. And that's really the big message that I wanted to convey today. So as I'm scrolling, I'm just showing you one setting after another. I even get to the point where you can copy and paste the terms. So here's the invoice terms, copy and paste it. Here's the terms and conditions, copy, paste. Copy and paste. Go to the invoice footer, put in that. Go to the investment guide, set it up like this, and you're done. So that person should have everything that they need to do what the SOP asked them to do. There shouldn't be a time where they say, I can't get access to it. I'm not able to get to that. And they probably can't get to much else. That's another nice thing is, within reason, they can't get to other things they don't need to be in. Chapter 13, for example, managing sales leads. How do you manage leads? Well, if the phone rings, just grab a piece of paper and write it all down. Give it to Fred and he'll call them back. No, that's not how it works. We have procedures for that. So that's how this ties in to the SOP, the standard operating procedure. You are going back to, let's get that back up here. Remember, you're tying in all these essential tasks. So you're writing chapter 1, controller SOP. Create and maintain annual budgets to be approved. To be approved by who? The president. But they know that they have to create and maintain an annual budget. You would write an SOP for that. How do you know which SOPs to write? Some of these things aren't going to be your priority. You're thinking annual budget, well, it's getting close to the end of the year, maybe I should write that. But producing financial reports and KPIs may be more important, so you write that SOP up. That's a good one to write up because it's so simple. You're just basically taking something right out of a help topic or the user manual. So I'd make that a priority since it could be done so quickly. Prepare state and federal payroll reports. Now that's more difficult. What reports? When? Who do you send them to? What information do they need? Might find out they don't even have permission to print those. So that might be a higher priority. That's how this is useful. It ties in to the SOPs, but even without SOPs, at least you have a list that you can use to create and hand everybody a high quality job description. Everybody can at least have a high quality job description. They still don't know how to use the software. They still don't know what KPI stands for, but at least you've given them a job description which is very clear on their mandate, what they're supposed to do. And every department has measurables. Now with this, you build an org chart. You can start drawing it out using Excel. You can draw your org chart. You can use Visio or something like this. This particular tool, once you come into employees and you list your employees, you select their title. So what you have here is the list of your people, and you might have the same person in here twice. Then you assign them their title, and the title isn't so important, but that's what ties them in to all those essential tasks, their roles, etc. You assign the title. The word isn't important, the assignment is. And then you tell the system who do they report to. You could write this on paper, put it in the job description for sure. Remember, the job description had at the top, if you didn't notice it, who they report to. Job description shows that, who they report to. So you would know that. You establish who they report to, and only one person in here, George Washington, the president, he doesn't report to anybody. Only one person doesn't report to anybody. and then you assign them their department. And now you have everything you need to draw an organization chart. And it might look like that. So at the very top, we have the executive leadership. That's the name of the department, executive leadership. Well, who's in there? George Washington and Travis. Travis is the chief operating officer. Well, who answers to Travis? Well, basically, just connect the lines. Every department answers to Travis, every department head. So moving from left to right, we have accounting and finance. Richard, Donna, John, their title, administration. We have field ops. Remember, that's a division. Within that division, we have 2 departments. We have the replacement and add-on. We have service and maintenance. Well, what about the middle? Those are more the admin people, the dispatchers, for example, warehouse manager. We have marketing. We have sales. At the top, you have the manager. Now, with a glance, you know exactly where you work in the company and who you report to. And you know who your report reports to, in case you have to jump over their head. You're not happy about something. You also know something very important. The boss does like 6 things. And what the boss needs to do is when you introduce the org chart and you print it and put it on the wall, you need to introduce it first and tell everybody, when you see my name on there more than once, that's a job opening. I don't want more than 1 job, maybe 2. So if you see that I'm doing service, I don't want to do it. If you see me managing the replacement department, I don't want to do that. If you see me as the lead tech, the master tech, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be building maintenance. That's an opportunity for you. Anytime you see the boss's name multiple times, that's an opening for you. When? Well, we'd have to talk about that because it depends on growth and what you can afford. But ultimately, that position will need to be filled because the CEO of a $10 million company can't also be running sewer calls half the day. You just can't do that. It's not a good idea anyway to do that. So that's really where it comes, where it all takes shape is when you create that accountability chart. Everybody knows who they're accountable to. They go back to their job description. They can read all about their job. What are the requirements? What are the key performance indicators, the measurables? What are the expectations for hours worked, days worked, etc.? Physical requirements. The job description is your first place to start. If you haven't done any of this, start with a good job description. Give it to everybody. Make sure they understand it. From that job description, you can start constructing everything else we talked about. Also, I'd make a priority to building your org chart. You can just kind of cheat and do it in the very beginning without going through all the exercises because it shouldn't take long, and that gives instant answers to everybody. You could do that before the job descriptions if you really wanted to. All right, so that is the basics of getting your company organized. If I haven't made the point now, I'll make it. You go to reports, go to financials, print an income statement. Print an income statement by department. Hand every department head an income statement with overhead allocated, and they'll see the net profit. You'll be able to give them an income statement, and they'll be able to see the net profit of their department or their entire division. That's powerful because they can compare what they see in that report with what's expected out of them in their job description. I said earlier, sales is accountable for many things, one of which is a closure rate. We have that in here, but you have to use the sales opportunity manager. Another thing I talked about was the adherence to job costing expectations. When you estimate a job is going to cost the company $100,000, then you need to be within a certain range, right? So we might say 2%. How do we know? The job estimate versus actual report is exactly that report. It tells you everything the estimator thought was going to happen versus reality. Here's the challenge, though, is getting the software to give you all this data. To make a long story short, the secret is not a secret at all. It's just do all your bookkeeping and accounting in the software. If you order things, receive things, pay your bills, if you manage inventory, track what's in, track what went out, etc., all of those reports are just a free bonus. You don't have to work at it at all. There's no such thing as doing job costing, really. It's more like printing a job costing report, because if the accounting and bookkeeping was all correct and proper, job costing reports are just a bonus. You just go print them. There's nothing extra to think about or do. All right, were there any final questions?
No.
No questions? All right. Well, so homework, I would say start with the org chart or the job descriptions. If you don't have either, I do your org chart first, then I do the job descriptions. If you got an org chart somewhere, update it and start on your job descriptions. And the reason why, again, I do it that way is because of practicality. It's just more practical to get started with those things than working on that document starting from scratch. All right, well, it was a pleasure to talk to you about this, and I look forward to seeing you every month during our webinars. And if you have any ideas on topics, subject matter, please let us know. And I want to thank my coworkers, Alicia and Will, behind the camera for making this possible. And on behalf of everyone here at Aptora, thank you for being our client, our customer, and I'll look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.